Welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health Facebook Live Show, episode 19. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and blogger of Let's Talk Kids Health. The concept of the show is to share information about behavioral health and wellness for children and families everywhere. Each week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now, remember, if you're viewing this live, you'll have the opportunity to post comments and ask questions of my guest. Now, let us know that you're here anytime by dropping a comment, saying hello, and using the hashtag live. The replay will be immediately available when we end this broadcast. Now, if you're watching and you're like, hey, so-and-so would really benefit from watching this, please feel free to share, because that's how we get the information out there. And if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out the past ones, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. Okay, so now on to this week's guest. Let's welcome Dr. Gretchen Pianka. Dr. Pianka is a pediatrician and mother of three who is passionate about helping families foster resilience to raise healthy children. As the founder of Resilience University, she teaches pediatricians and other providers how to integrate resilience building and stress busting strategies into their existing practice. She's the recipient of a grant from the American Academy of Pediatrics to study how we can help teens choose healthier coping strategies. She enjoys a busy primary care practice where she teaches students and residents. Dr. Pianka lives with her husband and three children in coastal Maine. I am so excited to have you here, Dr. Pianka. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. And I'm just putting in a plug for the podcast, the Pediatric Care series by the American Academy of Pediatrics, that was where I first met you. And after our conversation, I was just like, oh my gosh, I've got to have her and have her talk to families on my show. So thank you for talking to me again, because I think you are doing such wonderful work.
Thank you.
Well, before we actually get started, I was hoping, that you could share with the viewers and the listeners about like what drove you to do this work with resiliency.
Yeah, so, as a primary care pediatrician, I work with families like day in, day out, and we are encouraged to screen for a lot of factors that can cause disease. And sometimes those feel kind of depressing to me. Like, well, what else is going on in this family? Not everybody who experiences adversity ends up sick. Like, what can we do to help support wellness in the families, not just screen for all the unpleasant things that have happened in their experience? So I started thinking about developing just a really simple way of promoting positive childhood experiences within my practice. So helping parents with stress, helping people talk about family feelings within the family, and helping hopefully to foster a sense of supporting each other when things are hard, rather than feeling isolated and alone when things are hard, which I think, just kind of from what I've read and what I understand about adversity is really what causes the harm. So if the family can feel like they're all going through this supporting each other, then any adversity they face isn't quite so damaging in the long run. So that was sort of what drove me to do this. And I developed a program, which I've been doing for almost a year now, called Resilience University, where I work with families in 4 different sessions, and we work on kind of what's hard. So what's predictably bringing up difficult moments and hard times and resulting in big behavioral meltdowns. And then we kind of back the bus up, figure out what's going on, what led to that moment. And it has just been so wonderful. A lot of families really appreciate it. And being able to go there as their primary care doctor with them, be like, what's hard? Okay, I'm right here with you. We're going to figure it out. And a lot of them report that things get a lot easier and they see fewer meltdowns and they really feel supported. So it's just been delightful. But that's where I've learned a lot of what I'm talking about these days is
Oh
from my
my goodness.
so.
Yeah, first of all, this is such a huge topic, especially now with the pandemic, kind of putting just stress across the board to everybody. And the fact that you thought outside the box. Obviously, parents come to pediatricians routinely for well child visits and just for advice on parenting, but you've taken it a step further to really partner with families and give them those skills they need, like in the moment. And it sounds like it's been really successful.
It has been wonderful. I was reading from a 2016 study, the 0 to 3 parenting study. It gave us all sorts of information about what parents want and need. And one of the things I noticed from that is that, a lot of parents, almost all parents, come to their pediatrician for parenting advice, but only 62% of the time do they find our advice helpful. So I'm looking at that going, that's a D, right? Like we want to be more helpful, but to me, the advice that we're trained to give, it kind of sometimes we just need one more step to actually help it work when they get
Yes.
home. So they hear it in the office, and then what happens when they get home? So that's really been where the magic happens with this. It's like, what's the disconnect, and why is what we're saying not feeling as helpful to the families?
You are speaking my speak. I mean, this is, I like at the minute I met you, I was like, yes, I love what you're doing. So, yes, and now you can see why I brought her back on the show. So, let's start with our first question, just because I want to make sure that those who are watching understand what we actually mean by resilience. Can you define what that means?
Yeah, so, a lot of people have defined this in different contexts and in different ways. And of course, there's probably a lot of different ways to look at it. Some people talk about a bunch of different categories, fostering strength and all those for your children. My approach to resilience is really simple, just trying to get from one unpleasant or pleasant moment to the next unpleasant or pleasant moment and going kind of through your day in a very natural rhythm. So, not getting stuck in the unpleasant moments or stuck in the pleasant moments and realizing that life is just an ongoing shift between these. And that's okay. That's what it's like to be human. That's what life is. So, to me, resilience is that flexibility. I like to say to families, kind of the ability to go from one monkey bar to the next monkey bar when we're talking about emotions and experiences, just like they do on the playground. We're going to do that in life. So, going from one moment to the next without getting stuck, without hurting yourself or anyone else.
I love that analogy to the monkey bars because I think parents understand those monkey bars. And unfortunately, sometimes kids do get hurt from
Right.
those, right? But I love that sort of being able to navigate life going from bar to bar and not getting stuck. Yeah. Thank
And
you.
parents know that it takes a while to learn how to do the monkey bars too. They have to
Yes.
stand there. They have to support their kids until they get it, and then eventually they can do it on their own. So that's the same kind of thing with this type of resilience. It's like it takes a little bit of time. It's like coaching thing, but once they get it, they can do it on their own.
Uh, I mean, this is fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. And again, like if you're a provider or an educator thinking like, wow, that's genius. Use that. Use that analogy and say, Dr. Pianka just coined that for me. Okay. All right. Well, so what advice do you have for parents who are struggling with child misbehavior? Because it can be so overwhelming sometimes. They could, in the thick of it, they could just be like, I don't know what to do, very overwhelmed. How do you normally start that conversation? And then how do you actually partner with them?
Yeah, so I think to have a meaningful conversation about a child who isn't behaving the way the parent wants them to, you have to start with that space that it's okay that things aren't okay. Because, sometimes parents know they go to the doctor and they're like, well, I know if I say X, Y, or Z, she's not going to be happy with me. So you got to have that space, to open the space for a real honest conversation. And so sometimes I'll say, so I know things are hard. Things are hard for everybody right now, especially with the pandemic. We're all stuck at home. Tell me how things are going. How's remote learning going? And, if you just start at the superficial layer and say, how's school? Fine, you get fine. You don't get anything more. But if you really want to have that conversation, you can say, so what's hard with remote learning? And, then you find out, well, Johnny comes up and starts yelling when Susie's trying to do her homework. And then, blah, 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 and everybody starts fighting. So I try to pick a scenario, like a predictably difficult scenario, and then talk to the family about what is actually happening. And then what I say is kind of back the bus up a little bit, go back and try to figure out what led to this messy moment. So my way of approaching it with families is that every big unwanted behavior comes from a big unmanageable emotion. So maybe when Susie's starting to do her homework, she's actually feeling frustrated and angry and she can't focus in the first place. So when her little brother comes up and starts pulling on her shorts and saying, come play with me, she loses it and is yelling. Well, maybe Johnny was hungry. Like, how is everybody feeling in that situation? And is there any way as a parent that you could have predicted this meltdown before it happened. And I am so impressed at how many parents know exactly what's going on. They've just never thought about it that way. So they
Mhm.
often know that Susie was stressed and Johnny was hungry and bored, but they think to themselves, well, she has to do her homework or she'll be ruined for life. So the parents like, you got to sit down, you got to do your homework. We have these unreasonable expectations on ourselves as parents that we're supposed to control everything everybody does. And, we tell the little sibling, shh, be quiet, go to your room. Then he starts crying, then nobody's focusing, and it's a huge meltdown. But if you take that pressure off the parent and say, look, it's okay that things aren't okay. What's important is not how everybody's behaving, but how everybody's feeling. And those yucky behaviors will get easier, maybe even lessen if you focus on the feelings.
Yes, yes, yes. And I love that you're holding space for that and actually, asking those hard questions like head on because we all know that life is messy. But just really saying, I'm here with you. And I like your analogy, backing up the bus. Let's like go backwards here and kind of decode this and break it down. So, I love that. And so what you just said was just focusing more on the emotion. Can you talk just a little bit more about that? Because I think for some families that might be really hard. Some families don't like to kind of talk about emotion. I mean, maybe that's just how they, were raised and it just doesn't come easy for them. How do you navigate that?
So that's a really good point. And I have noticed that in some families, there might be one parent who wants to talk about feelings and one who doesn't, or one child maybe who's incredibly aware of their feelings, but has never felt like it's okay to talk about it. So it's really interesting to say, do you guys talk about feelings? And they kind of always look at me like, what are you talking about? So sometimes it's good to start with what I call kind of the low hanging fruit, the easy things. And I say to them, well, so how do you take care of yourself when you're hungry? And even really little kids, like 3-year-olds, will go, eat. How do you take care of yourself when you're cold? Get a blanket. What do you do to take care of yourself when you're tired? Sleep. So I start with those and point out to the parents, look, they know what to do when they have these feelings. You've taught them. You did this. You
Hmm.
taught them how to do that. That's why they know. But did anybody tell you, and I'm talking to the parents, did anybody tell you how to take care of yourself when you were sad or angry or frustrated or scared? And they're usually like, no. Like some of them are like, oh, I've been in counseling for 20 years to try to figure that out. But, the parents, nobody taught them. And so they don't feel empowered to teach the children because they're still learning it themselves. So what I say is just basically don't worry about which one of those feelings it is. Over time, you can start to label them. And sometimes that helps you pick a healthy coping strategy for that specific feeling. But at the beginning, just notice you feel yucky. You don't feel good. Something's going on, whether it's angry, frustrated, irritated, annoyed, something. Try to pause and do a self-care break. So I teach them to just pause and take a minute to take care of yourself. Don't worry too much about what the feeling is. Definitely don't get caught on the idea that somebody or something caused you to feel that way. Just notice you don't feel good. Take care of yourself. And then once you notice your stress level kind of notched down a little bit, then you can go back to whatever it was that you were trying to do. Like, for example, homework, the dining room table with your little sibling trying to get you to go play with them. So if the little girl who's trying to do her homework can just pause, go outside, run around 10 times, take 5 big deep breaths, have a glass of water, and sit back down to work, she might be able to say to her mom, Mom, can you please move my little brother? He's driving me crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So teaching kids to use their words, but
Yeah.
being able to identify both the positive and negative emotions that everybody's feeling in the moment.
Right. And taking the stress away from, I think a lot of times parents don't want to talk about it because they don't have an immediate cure. They don't have something to fix it. And, sort of like us as providers in the office, sometimes you worry if you start talking about that, you're going to get stuck there all day. But really, my experience has been you just open it. It's like once it's there, it's not hiding in the shadows. It's no longer driving you. And then the child can say, yeah, I don't feel good. I'm feeling really frustrated. And the parent can say, okay, why don't you take a quick self-care break? And then we'll come back and try math in 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and then the child's prefrontal cortex is more likely to be online. They're more likely to actually be able to do that math problem and it'll all work a lot better. But if you're trying to force a kid to do math when the part of their brain that they need for math is not working, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just driving yourself crazy as a parent. So once the parents understand that the emotions can actually get in the way of their children doing what they need to do, and then also the parents remaining calm and present and making their own good decisions for their children, once they see that, it's like, oh, wait, feelings are important. And then it's not a scary thing anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the way you just talked about it, it sounds so simple, but in the moment, it could be really, really hard, overwhelming, stressful, frustrating, especially if, like, let's say siblings are being aggressive towards each other, or, they're sort of having those moments where they become physical. I mean, what do you say to parents who talk about that and that challenge?
And that's probably, of all the things where people have come to me for the Resilience University program, that is one of the number one reasons that they come for help. They're like, okay, he's always had a hard time, but now he started hitting his sister, and that's just not okay.
Yep.
So I use the same back the bus up strategy. And I say, okay, so by the time, Johnny starts hitting his sister, like, did you know things were, what was going on? Did you know something was escalating? Did you know he was having a hard time? And like, yeah, of course I did, but I told him he needed to clean his room anyway. And I'm like, okay, well, was that working? Well, no, he was just sitting in there yelling, and then his little sister came in and wanted to get something, and he shoved her and she hurt herself, and then that's why we're here. And I'm like, okay, so next time that you're in that situation, try to notice when Johnny's feeling is still small. And I'll draw it for them. I make like a little curve, and I say, most of our unpleasant emotions start out small, and then the child doesn't know what to do with them, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger until they're at screech, where they hit the sister or something happens. So if you're getting a lot of that screech behavior, you're probably missing the sign that something is going on with Johnny ahead of time. So sometimes they're baseline stresses. Sometimes it's that they're not sleeping well, they're not eating well. Maybe there's household dysfunction. Maybe parents are getting divorced, or things are stressing the child that are kind of beyond anybody's control. But that doesn't mean that you can't notice that feeling when it's there and go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to need you to clean your room. First, I want you to go and take care of yourself. I want you to ride your bike. I want you to get some exercise. Can you sit down with me? We're going to do a couple big deep breaths. And then if they start feeling frustrated, you give them permission to pause from their task and take another self-care break. So maybe Johnny needs to take 10 breaks and run around outside 10 times before he's finished cleaning his room, which is preferable to him trying to do it all in one stretch and ending up hurting his sister. So acknowledging that you have to take care of yourself. And then parents have to model that too. They have to support it. They have to celebrate it. And they can't say, no, you can't go outside until you're done cleaning your room. They have to be able to say, okay, you need it to take a break. It's okay to go outside. You just still need to finish cleaning your room. You're not off the hook. Got to clean your room, but yes, it's okay to take care of yourself.
Yeah, no, that's I love that. I mean, it's the framework works and it can be adaptable to the different issues at hand. I mean, it's such a, fundamental thing that emotions can drive our thoughts and then ultimately our behavior. And what you're doing is really teaching it and distilling it down in a pretty, like, easy to understand way. I mean, yeah.
I have been amazed at how, I mean, the kids understand this. I have 7 and 8-year-old kids who are listening to me, and they figure it out on their own. And they come back and they see me later and they say, Dr. Pianka, I stopped hitting my friends. I started doing my breathing, and they just
Oh,
know that when they start to feel that feeling get bigger, they stop
yeah.
and they do 5 big deep breaths. They walk away, and then they stopped hurting their friends, which they don't want to hurt their friends either. Most of these kids, they feel terrible when they hit other humans. They don't want to. So it's wonderful, and it's quite a young age that kids can start doing this on their own too. So.
I love it. I love it. Now, before we move to the next question, I have to stop you and say you brought up breathing, okay?
Mhm.
And can you explain to listeners, viewers about why this actually works? And I know you have a great resource for this too, but can you
Yeah.
explain that? Because sometimes families are like, breathing, I mean, how is that going to help, right?
Right. So I like to think about it as though when you're feeling really stressed, we sort of as a culture think that we're going to use our brains to tell our bodies to stop being stressed. So, if you're whether you're a parent or a child, you start feeling really uncomfortable, stressed, upset, anxious, worried, angry, whatever it is, you tell yourself, stop it, stop feeling that way. And you try to use your brain to boss your body around and tell it to stop. But what's happening in that moment is that your brain is being driven by lower parts of your brain that are very emotional, and they do not listen to the other part of your brain that's going, stop, stop, stop. So all you do is just fuel the fire and you get more and more upset. But what you can do is you can use your body to actually tell your brain that you're okay by doing big deep breaths, which uses your vagus nerve, which is that long windy nerve that goes pretty much everywhere in your body. Your vagus nerve can go from your brain to your body, but then also from your body back up into what I like to call the back door of your brain. And so when you're doing big deep breaths, breathing, I usually just say breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. So in through your nose like you're smelling something good, and out through your mouth like you're blowing out a birthday candle. And then doing that even just 5 times, parents notice and kids notice that they lowered their stress level and they feel better, like 1 notch better. It's not magic, but it heads you in the right direction. And that's using your vagus nerve to come back up into your brain and help to calm that lower, anxious, angry, less helpful, reactive part of your lower brain, and help that good thinking part of your brain to come back online. So it's magic, even though it's really simple. And you do have to play around with it. It's not just any old breathing, like hyperventilating doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You want nice, big, low, long breaths. Breathe in and then try to breathe out longer than you breathed in. So
Yeah.
try it 5
Yeah.
times. It's magic.
Yes, yes. I do. I teach kids, the finger breathing too,
Good
so that
one.
with the 5 breaths there. But I really love that you just in like less than a minute explain the biology, the practicality, and it's simple, and even kids can understand that too. So, I mean, again, this is just awesome.
Thank you. The kids love learning about their brains too and how they can use their body to help their brain. And they know, they're like, I was trying to do my math and my brain wasn't working right. I'm like, well, that's okay. That's normal. Your brain wasn't actually online at that point. You
Yeah.
can do your breathing and then you can get back to your math. So it's wonderful. The kids and parents alike both like learning about their brains. So,
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So this is a great segue to our next question. So we've touched on this, but if we can go a little bit deeper. So what role does parent stress have on child behavior? And then the second kind of related question are, what can parents do to manage their own stress?
So one of the things that I think we all know is that parent stress is not good for children. Like that's why we beat ourselves up when we feel stressed. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't feel stressed. This is bad for my kids. Can't let my kids see me if I'm stressed. We give ourselves as parents these impossible expectations. Like I can somehow manage this or get rid of the stress. And, add the pandemic to what we were already doing as parents. And that's impossible. So, starting with just acknowledging that we're stressed as parents and that that's sort of baseline, and it's okay that things aren't perfect. It's okay that things are hard. It's okay that things are maybe even harder than usual. And then realizing that when we are stressed, if we take a minute to do breathing or to do something that helps us to calm our nervous system, then we can hold that calm space for our children that we want to create. There's a wonderful image that's on the internet that shows 2 boats in a calm sea, and then that's sort of the parent's sea, or a boat in a calm sea, and then a boat in a rough sea. And the parent's supposed to try to calm the sea for the child's boat to be nice and calm. But what ends up happening if the parent's not feeling calm is that they're just trying to use, like, they're trying to boss their body into being calm and they're not. And the child knows they're not calm. So it just doesn't end up creating that nice, calm co regulation space that kids really need to develop their own self regulation. So, and a lot of us as parents, we didn't grow up with that either. Our parents were stressed. Our parents weren't creating that nice, calm sea for us. So we kind of never learned this. So it goes back to that, like we're trying to do something with our children that some of us have never experienced. So it's a whole new ball game. So giving yourself a break, like, if you were going to run a marathon, you wouldn't just walk out the front door and go run it. You would try, practice, and train over a long period of time. So this is like learning a new skill. So learning to notice when you're stressed or upset or whatever it is that's going on within you as a parent, just noticing it and not expecting it to go away, not beating yourself up over the fact that you don't feel good. Using your language to say to your child, Mommy's having a really hard moment right now. I need a second to take a few big deep breaths. I know you're having a hard time too, and I'm going to help you. I just need to take care of myself. And that's okay. Like not expecting yourself to be perfect all the time and perfect for your kids and not to hide all the problems you're having. That doesn't mean dumping all your problems on your children, but just acknowledging that when you don't feel good, our kids learn how to read our feelings, before they turn 1. So they're on to us. And they know our facial expressions. They know when we're not feeling good. My kids still say to me, they're like, Mom, that's your worried face. And I'm like, oh gosh, sorry. The way the wrinkles go.
Yeah.
But they're on to all of our little body language things. And so just you don't have to hide the stress, you have to acknowledge it and then practice self-care. So having some sort of self-care strategy. And the thing I love about what I'm doing with Resilience University is I'm literally teaching the same self-care skills to the parents and the kids. So
Yes.
everybody's learning breathing exercises. Everybody's learning how to meditate with a glitter jar. Everybody's learning mindfulness and body scans.
Yep.
And like you guys are all doing the same thing here. It's not like this is one rule for the parents and one for the kids. These are family skills. So
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, you're hitting on one of the most fundamental positive parenting principles, which is the role modeling principle. And I think sometimes parents, this is a great reminder because, parents are kids' first teachers. Kids are sponges. They are learning from watching us. They get the good, the bad, and everything in between. But it's so validating, too, for kids to realize that it's not just them experiencing these strong negative emotions. Everybody does. And it's such a wonderful gift that we have as parents to be able to remember that, we're human and it's okay. We can give ourselves some self compassion, but modeling that and teaching that skill to our kids, it'll serve them well.
so true. And there's so many things that we do as parents that I've pointed out when I'm working with families that are like vagus nerve soothing, self-soothing things like singing.
Uh-huh.
We sing to babies all the time, and that soothes parental anxiety and soothes the baby. I mean, it's perfect. You're using your vagus nerve. You've already figured this out. I tell parents, you're already doing this. You just didn't know you were. You know that singing helps you feel better and helps to calm a stressful situation, and baby falls asleep and you feel less stressed. So just acknowledging that there are a lot of things our families are already doing, but just showing them that these are actually resilience superpowers that you've already got in your toolkit, just making sure they know when to access them and trying to help them remember, which is really the key skill, is remembering to take a break when things start to feel heated and then say, okay, I'm not feeling good, we need to take one of those self-care breaks and then come back to this later.
Yeah, what I love about what you just said is that it's it's reminding parents that they already know this. I mean, what a strength-based lens that you have to really be able to just remind folks because when you're living in the thick of it, you can't see past sometimes. It's really hard. But to have someone like you cheering families on and saying, "You've got this. You know how to do this. You're just, I'm here right with you." Coaching them through, uh, you know, you,
And reminding them too that it's okay when you have those messy moments and you don't get it right and everybody ends up screaming and the kids still hit each other. Like you're not ruining them for life. It's
yes,
okay. You'll try again the next time. If you wanted them to learn how to play soccer, you wouldn't give up the first time somebody missed a goal. You'd say, that's all right. We'll be back out there tomorrow. We'll keep working on it. So same kind of thing. Don't worry. It's not about controlling their behavior. It's about facilitating emotional wellness, which then will result in better behavior. So just giving them permission to kind of lighten up on the whole behavioral aspect and that you're not ruining them for life if you don't discipline everything you see that you don't like.
right, right. And so I guess based on what you're saying, Dr. Pianka, and if there are other providers out there, are you advocating like how early do we start talking about this with families?
So, ideally, in a perfect world, I would love for this to be something that OB providers start prenatally with parents so that they
Hmm.
understand, that this is, yes, having a baby is going to be amazing, but sometimes it's not all like the Pampers and Johnson and Johnson commercials on TV.
Or the Gerber
Sometimes
commercials too, yeah.
exactly. Sometimes it's a little bit messier than what you were thinking, so that parents have that self-care mentality coming into being a parent. But you can start this conversation anytime. A lot of times I'll start it right when parents start asking me, what do I do when she misbehaves? Kind of that 18 month, 15, 18 month when they're starting to not quite be as perfectly obedient as they were when they were littler. And then, I try to discourage timeouts and encourage, that idea that, okay, name the feeling, try to identify what it was, try to look as a parent at that point, you're really doing most of the work. You're trying to figure out, okay, well, Johnny missed his snack, so he was probably hungry. So next time I need to feed him before we go to the store or whatever the scenario is. And then, as they get older, the kids can actually start to do this. I have 2-year-olds who watch their older siblings and their parents meditate with a glitter jar, so
Uh-huh.
that when they see the glitter jar, they immediately start going, and it's
Mm.
just a visual. So they've learned it by then, and that's 2. So I think if we model it, they can learn it. And, it could transform the terrible 2s if they actually have a way of taking care of themselves when they don't get what they want. So I think no time is too early.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you even brought in OB providers because and I love that, planting that seed, right? I just love that. So I hats off to you for thinking so proactively about this. And everybody got to have a glitter jar, right? Yeah, I keep mine close at hand. So, well, I have really, really enjoyed chatting with you today. I mean, this has been such a phenomenal episode with so many pearls. Families, if you're watching this is going to be one that you're going to want to share, rewatch, take notes, and share it with a friend, right? So, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today, your time, Dr. Pianka. It was such a blast. I always love talking to you, and I hope to maybe invite you again for another episode.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Mala.
So, just as a reminder, now, next week's special guest is Dr. Krupa Playforth, who will be talking with me about the fourth trimester. Now, again, don't forget that the show will always be Thursdays, not at 8 p.m., because as I just found out, my son has marching band practice till at 9, and I have to pick him up. So I've had to shift the show. I've always been saying 8, but it's now going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time because got to balance the work-life balance thing. So from this point on, our show will always be at Thursday, 7:30 p.m. And then just as a quick plug, those of you who know I do a parenting book club every month or every other month. June's book club will be coming out, the form to sign up. It's going to be Anxiety Relief for Kids by Dr. Bridget Flynn Walker. It's a fantastic book. This is one of the books that I found is the most practical in terms of, just like Dr. Pianka says, learning those different strategies to help support kids, like name negative thoughts and how to kind of understand the behavior, the emotion underneath that behavior. So you're going to want to check it out. Make sure to check in on my Facebook page for the sign up, and please join reading along next month. All right. Well, so if again a reminder, any of you watching, if you have suggestions for future topics or guests, please feel free to reach out to me at letstalkkidshealth@gmail.com. Drop me a comment below or just message me on social media. And again, remember, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, to be alerted every week when I go live, and follow my blog Facebook page. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Pianka. It was such a joy to have you.
Thank you.